Welcome everyone to Automox's April Patch Tuesday breakdown. For those of you that remember, March provided us some pretty interesting exploits, and April keeps the ball rolling with more critical and zero-day vulnerabilities. We have plenty to dive into, but first let's take a look at who will be walking you through today's updates. On deck today, we have myself, Justin Knapp, covering the critical and noteworthy patch updates. And making his first appearance in the Patch Tuesday series is Nate Taggart from the product management team. Grateful to have him here today. And Nate will be giving us a quick look at what's new within the Automox platform. For those of you new to our Patch Tuesday series, this is a fairly short affair. We really try to keep it short and sweet and really only touch on the most critical items. With that in mind, we'll kick off with a short recap of March vulnerability totals and recent events. We'll then spend a little more time discussing April's patch release, specifically detailing out the most critical vulnerabilities to patch, as well as out-of-band patches for Mozilla and Chrome. Nate will then give us a quick look at what's new in the Automox platform and provide some details around product updates. And as always, we'll leave plenty of time for any questions you all may have. So go ahead and use the Q&A box in the lower right corner to submit questions anytime during the webinar. And the one and only Jay Goodman will be joining us at the end to answer any questions that you have. Finally, last but not least, we'll be giving away a new Raspberry Pi 4 kit this month. We'll have a single question to answer at the very end, and the person that correctly answers first within the Q&A box will be the proud owner of a Raspberry Pi kit. All right, a few housekeeping items to keep in mind. For those who have joined us for past webinars, you may have noticed we're using a new webinar platform on 24. And actually, we've been using this for a few months now. So if you've joined us before, you probably already know how to use it. If you're new to the series or new to the platform, just a few quick tips to help you navigate. First, we have the slide view window where we'll be walking through today's Patch Tuesday releases. You can resize this window or make it full screen, whatever you prefer. The Q&A box is in the lower right corner, so go ahead and submit any questions that you have as they pop up. Also keep in mind that all participants will be muted and we'll address any questions towards the end of the webinar. All right, now for those who may have missed the March release, we had seen an overall increase in vulnerabilities, which came in at 89. But more importantly, we observed a pretty high number of critical vulnerabilities and 0 days that were actively being exploited in the wild. And you'll see here in just a minute that April picks up exactly where we left off last month. Before we jump into April's release, I did want to provide some details on two information disclosure bugs that were discovered and reported by Danny Jordan at Rapid7. CVE 26908 and 26909 are both bugs that affected all Automox agent versions prior to 31, and both received pretty low CVSS scores of 3.3 and 3.7 respectively. Now, we began phased agent upgrades last week, and most, if not all, agents should be upgraded at the time the disclosure was released yesterday. Automox continually works to identify and fix security vulnerabilities in our product and infrastructure, and naturally, we believe that the community around us helps to create a better and safer world, and we just want to give a big thank you to Danny Jordan and the rest of the Rapid7 team for helping us continually improve and secure our platform for our end users. All right, with that, let's jump into the details of this month's release. We saw a pretty notable increase with April's Patch Tuesday, yielding 108 new Microsoft security fixes, delivering the highest monthly total for 2021 so far, and showing a return to the 100+ totals that we consistently saw in 2020. As you can see, this month's haul includes 19 critical vulnerabilities and a high severity 0 day that is being actively exploited in the wild, which we're going to dig into in just a minute. The critical vulnerabilities this month were spread out across multiple services and OS components. This includes Win32K, Azure Sphere, Remote Procedure Call, or just RPC, Media Video Decoder, and Microsoft Exchange Server. Now, the several critical Exchange Server vulnerabilities are worth noting, considering last month we witnessed multiple Exchange Server vulnerabilities that were being exploited in the wild by state-sponsored threat actor Hafnium. And we're going to get into that a little bit later as well. So on the Adobe front, we have 10 security fixes being rolled out in updates across 4 Adobe products, including Photoshop, Digital Editions, Bridge, and RoboHelp, with all being rated a priority 3. None of the CVEs addressed by Adobe are listed as publicly known or being exploited in the wild at the time of release. You may want to prioritize the Photoshop update first, considering that we have seen as many as 9 exploited CVEs over the years. Of the 4 updates, Photoshop definitely presents the most risk, so you probably want to prioritize this at the top. Now, moving on to Mozilla, we see updates to Firefox, Firefox ESR, and Thunderbird, which were released in late March. And we also have a new update to Thunderbird that came out last week. Now, as for Chrome updates, there were 6 Chromium-based vulnerabilities that affect both Chrome and Edge browsers. These were fixed and grouped under Microsoft's total CVE count, which we did not include in our total count. So that would actually raise the total Patch Tuesday count to 114 CVEs. Now, what's really interesting on the Chrome front is the news that dropped yesterday regarding the disclosure of working exploit code for a 0-day remote code execution vulnerability, which is said to affect current versions of Google Chrome and potentially other browsers like Microsoft Edge that use the Chromium framework. At the time of reporting, Google had not yet released a Chrome update to address the bug, but a new Chrome version is expected. All right, let's go ahead and dig into some of the details around the critical vulnerabilities and 0-day exploit that Microsoft released yesterday. First up to bat is the Win32k elevation of privilege bug that was actively being exploited in the wild at the time of release. To exploit this vulnerability, an attacker would first have to log on to the system and then run a specially crafted application. The exploitation of this vulnerability would allow an attacker to execute code in the context of the kernel and gain system privileges, allowing the attacker access to critical Windows components and information. Now, because this vulnerability is already being used by attackers, patching as soon as possible is absolutely crucial. Next up is a critical remote code execution vulnerability that affects Azure Sphere Internet of Things devices. As a default behavior, these devices are upgraded regularly when connected to the internet, and risk exposure should be limited to those devices that have not connected to the internet since before the patch release, or devices that have never connected to the internet for updates. Now, moving on to 2 critical bugs impacting the Microsoft Media Video Decoder, which, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's a series of video codecs and corresponding video coding formats. This vulnerability could allow an attacker to execute arbitrary code if the attacker convinces a user to open a specially crafted media file. The attacker then could install programs. They could also view, change, or delete data, or they could just flat out create a new account with full user rights. Due to the popularity of sharing videos across a multitude of platforms, this is another one that Automox would recommend patching as soon as possible. Now, as you can tell, we also have a bevy of RCEs that affect Microsoft Windows remote procedure call, 12 in total. As some of you are probably already familiar with, we see a ton of RCEs every month, and obviously April is no exception. So as a refresher, RPC is a protocol used to request a service from a program that is located on another computer or device on the same network. The vulnerabilities allow for remote code execution on the target system and may be exploited by sending a specially crafted RPC request. Now, depending on the user privileges, an attacker could install programs, they could change or delete data, or again, create additional user accounts with full user rights. Microsoft marks these as exploitation less likely. However, it is highly recommended to quickly patch and remediate any RCE vulnerabilities on systems. Leaving latent vulnerabilities with RCE exploits can easily lead to a faster spreading attack. All right, last but not least, we have 4 new critical RCE vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange Server. And following on the heels of last month's disclosure of a series of critical 0 days impacting Exchange Server, Microsoft has patched 4 new vulnerabilities in the same product set after being alerted to them by the National Security Agency. CVSS scores across the 4 new bugs range from 8.8 to 9.8. CVE 28480 and 28481 are both pre-authentication, meaning an attacker does not need to authenticate to vulnerable Exchange Server to exploit them. So this one, or I should say these 4 go without saying that they need to be at the top of the list. All right, that covers all we have for critical vulnerabilities in 0 days that were at the forefront of this month's Patch Tuesday release. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Nate, to briefly cover some of the recent Automox platform updates. So Nate, take it away.
Thanks, Justin. Really nice to be here today. So we had 3 product updates over the last few weeks that I wanted to highlight and surface for everyone. The first one Justin did mention already, which is a new agent version, Agent 31. And as Justin mentioned, this is going to address, this has addressed 2 CVEs that were responsibly disclosed. The update cycle has already happened, but the main change to the agent is that it's changed some of the way that sensitive data can be logged. Effectively, an admin of a device was able to see potentially sensitive parameters in the log file. So that is no longer the case. So that agent update has happened. And as always, we really focus on agent performance and keeping that lightweight. The next big change, this is probably really important if you're an AWS customer. If not, this may be less relevant for you. But Automox is now available through the AWS marketplace. And one of the key reasons that this can matter is if you already have a budget and approval process for your AWS infrastructure, bundling Automox in that can actually kind of simplify your budgeting, your approval to get Automox deployed and provisioned as your infrastructure scales. So being able to handle that together can be really, really convenient. One of the things that the AWS marketplace does is that they actually feature testimonials and case studies, which can elevate your organization and provide some visibility. So if you're interested in partnering with us on that, we'd love to talk with you. And then finally, one that I'm really excited about because this is work that I was really deeply involved in is community worklets, which you can now access from the console. So you may be familiar with Automox's community site, which is a forum where our community team and our engineers engage directly to troubleshoot, to swap ideas and best practices. And what we've done is we've curated example worklets, custom policies that have been submitted through the community, and we've brought them into the Automox console. So what I wanted to do is kind of step through that, give you a sense of what that looks like. It's already live in the UI right now, so you can play with this in your own account. Well, under the system management screen, we have this new list view for community worklets. And what these are is effectively templates. They're examples that you can click into that give a lot of different types of functionality, everything from installing custom software packages, configuration management, security. And each of these policies has been curated, they've been reviewed, they've been annotated with really rich comments. So you can click into one of them and you can see exactly how it's doing, what it's doing, how it would work, and you can tweak this. So this is effectively a template that you can start from, and then you can customize to fit exactly the use case that you have in your organization. So if you click into one, you see 2 scripts. There's a remediation script, which actually is going to execute the policy. And there's an evaluation script, which you can use to determine which devices this should apply to or whether or not it should apply in a given case. And if you click through to implement one of these, it's going to take you into a custom builder for your own account. So this isn't going to implement the exact community one. It's going to implement your version of it, which means if the community one is updated, that's not going to automatically change your workflow. You're secure in the sense that you can create your own, you can kind of fork off of the main template and apply any custom functionality. It's worth taking a few minutes to look through that list, because one of the key advantages here is that there's a lot of custom functionality that you can unlock as part of your existing Automux subscription. And one thing we're really trying to do is make sure that you're aware of all of the powerful things you can do while using Automux. These provide a lot of examples of things that you may not have realized you could do today. So I want to make sure that you get kind of the full value out of your subscription. And with that, I want to hand it off to Jay Goodman to step us through our Q&A section.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. So we got a few questions in the Q&A today. First, there was a question around, are there any recommendations around feature updates via Automox? And actually, this ties in very nicely with what Nate just showed. We actually recommend using Automox worklets to deploy Microsoft feature updates. And if you actually go into the community worklets section within your Automox console, you can see some of the examples of the previous feature updates worklets that have been used. And so we recommend modeling it off of one of those existing ones. Next question we had was, which agent version is the newest that you're rolling out? So that's Agent 31, or colloquially Agent 31, and the actual version number is 1.0.31. And then the last question I see here right away is, last month we excluded a handful of KBs regarding the blue screen of death and printer issues across our enterprise. Can I remove these exclusions based on new Microsoft cumulative rollups this month, or should I keep them in place? So those 2 KBs that were responsible for blue screens of death have been fixed by Microsoft and should be okay to start deploying. However, we do recommend that you go and take a look at the documentation around both of those KBs, given the sensitivity of blue screen of deaths and the potential work impacts, and make sure that it is remediated to your organization's needs before you roll it out. So I don't see any additional Q&A right at the moment, but I'll hang on here for just a bit while Justin goes through the Raspberry Pi giveaway here and answer any other questions I see pop up. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jay. Okay, time for everyone's favorite part of the webinar, the giveaway. The Raspberry Pi 4 kit has been a pretty big hit in the past, so we're bringing it back for April. All you have to do to win this kit is answer one very simple question. And this month's question is a really easy one. I promise we're gonna make these more difficult in the future, but get ready to type and submit your answer in the Q&A box. Again, the first person to correctly answer wins. All right, everyone ready? Today's question is, how many critical Microsoft Exchange Server vulnerabilities were included in April's Patch Tuesday release? And all we need is a number for this one. And I know there's a bit of delay in the Q&A, so let's see who answered first. All right. Looks like Andrew Vega is the winner for today's Raspberry Pi kit. Andrew, we'll have somebody from the team reach out and just get shipping info so we can send it your way. But appreciate you participating in the giveaway. And before we go, just one last thing. I wanted to mention an upcoming webinar that we have on April 28th for getting started in the Automox community. We'll include how to get started and the benefits of the community, as well as a chance to win some pretty nice prizes. Not a Raspberry Pi kit, but we do have prizes like our stainless steel Auto Yeti mug. So you can sign up for that webinar using the link provided in the resource list. And that's all we have today, folks. So thank you all for joining our Patch Tuesday breakdown, and we hope to see you again next month or in one of our other virtual events coming up. Take care.